Well, before we take a look at that package by Sherwin, we are going to cross now to Moscow and just taking a look at the latest developments there and what has been happening, and also just to get a sense of what the feel is like on the ground. And Ukrainian Ambassador to South Africa, Liubov Abravitova, has called on President Cyril Ramaphosa to impose sanctions on Russia as well, because the response to the invasion of Ukraine could determine the future world order. But let's find out what's happening in Russia. We cross to our Russian correspondent, Giles Gibson. Giles, good morning to you. So the world, of course, at the moment looking at what's happening in the Ukraine, but what's the view like from Russia? What are people saying on the ground?
Well, the sun is coming up here about 24 hours, almost exactly, since Russian President Vladimir Putin announced in this dawn address that Russian troops were moving into Ukraine. The big question ever since then has been really how much support he has from the Russian people for launching this offensive. We do now have a sense, after protests overnight in the last 12 hours or so, that there is real opposition towards this war amongst at least some of the Russian population, that despite President Putin claiming in his speech that he has their support. According to an independent monitor, more than 1,700 people were detained across Russia on Thursday, a lot of them protesting in Moscow itself, here in the Russian capital, but there were also smaller protests breaking out in St. Petersburg and other cities around the country. And as you would expect, there was a very strong response from police here in Moscow. There was a very large gathering in Pushkin Square, which is this traditional venue really in the capital for protests and gatherings of that sort of thing. And as protesters gathered alongside them, there was a very heavy police presence. The authorities here trying to prevent images of protesters chanting things like "No to war" on the streets of Moscow as Russia launches this invasion.
So who is Vladimir Putin looking to basically support him in this offensive? Because we obviously saw the Pakistani president in Russia as well. So where is he looking to find support, Charles?
Yeah, that's right. Imran Khan, the Pakistani Prime Minister, was here in Moscow for a meeting with Vladimir Putin as Russian troops were rolling across the border into Ukraine. There's also been some comments from China not condemning this military operation, but certainly not supporting it either, really sitting on the fence, not taking the sort of line that we've seen from Western governments such as the US, the UK and of course the European Union as well. Vladimir Putin does have some allies within the region, including of course Belarus and the president there, Alexander Lukashenko. He said on Thursday that his forces are not involved in this military operation. He also offered to mediate between Ukrainians and the Russians, but at the same time we're also getting lots of reports that Russian troops actually crossed into Ukraine from Belarus itself. So the Belarusians saying that their forces are not involved, but also, according to these reports, opening their borders for Russian troops to cross into Ukraine.
And Giles, of course, the United Nations is also one to watch at the moment. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking there about what's to come in the next few days and saying that this would have a profound impact on the world, the decisions that would be taken there. But Russia, of course, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, will have the power to veto, whatever decisions they come up with there. But again, has there been any indication from Putin or those in his inner circle around what Moscow intends to do in that regard?
Well, really, the only couple of times that we've seen President Putin out in public in front of the cameras since he made that dawn address to the Russian people announcing this invasion was firstly, as we were talking about, when he was hosting the Pakistani leader Imran Khan here in Moscow in the Kremlin. And then we also heard from him sort of late on Thursday, local time here in Moscow. He was meeting with business leaders from across Russia. This meeting was broadcast live on television. And really the messaging there was, as Western governments, as the US, the UK and the European Union brought in even tougher sanctions against the Russian economy. The message there was that the Russian economy can keep going, that it can survive these sanctions, although there must certainly be ordinary Russians wondering how their lives are going to change as a result of this invasion and those sanctions coming down.
And many, of course, hinting of greater reliance on its relationship with China and perhaps other BRICS partners as well for Russia. Let's talk to that, just in terms of how heavily Russia would have to lean on its BRICS partners or other allies when it comes to sanctions that will be imposed.
Yeah, if you look at the way the BRICS countries are reacting, it's a very different story depending on who you're looking at. So, of course, I'm sure you've been talking about the reaction there in South Africa. There's also been the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He actually telephoned President Putin as this invasion was being launched, as we were seeing reports of explosions and troops moving across the border all over Ukraine. We are hearing from the Indian government that Narendra Modi's message to Vladimir Putin was to stop this invasion. So he is publicly coming out against this military action. As we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago, of course, the Chinese not condemning this at all. And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch how they vote, how they react when the United Nations Security Council meets in New York City a little bit later on.
And Giles, is there any update with regard to any fatalities suffered so far by Russian troops?
Yeah, we're getting very different stories from the Ukrainian government and then from the Russian government, from the Kremlin here in Moscow. The Ukrainian government, over the last 24 hours, as this offensive has been launched, they have been making claims about shooting down Russian planes over the skies of Ukraine, and also about casualties potentially to Russian troops. Just in the last couple of hours as well, the Ukrainians have been saying that they actually shot down a Russian plane over the capital, Kiev. And there are pictures on social media, video coming in of this plane, just sort of a ball of fire in the sky, what appears to be a plane being shot down right over the city. As far as the Russians are concerned, they have so far not acknowledged any casualties whatsoever on their side.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much, Giles Gibson, our correspondent in Moscow. And no doubt we'll be hearing more from all our correspondents across the world as these developments unfold. And that's where we'll leave that story for the time being.